Honourable members, the Speaker.
I acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples who are the traditional custodians of the Canberra area and pay respects to the elders, past and present, of all Australia's Indigenous peoples. Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to vouchsafe Thy blessing upon this Parliament. Direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of Thy glory and the true welfare of the people of Australia. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be Thy name. Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. On behalf of the House, I welcome as guests, as the President of the Senate and honourable senators, to this sitting of the House of Representatives to hear an address by the Honourable James Marape MP, Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea.
Mr Prime Minister, I welcome you to the House of Representatives chamber. Your address today is a significant occasion in the history of our nation and this House. And I give the call to the Prime Minister.
My friend Prime Minister Marape and Madam Marape and the delegation as well. On behalf of the Government and the people of Australia, it is a great pleasure to so warmly welcome you to the heart of our democracy. You are the first leader of another nation to address us in this chamber since 2020, and the first leader of a Pacific Island nation to address the Australian Parliament ever. It is fitting that such an honour belongs to Papua New Guinea. Australia and Papua New Guinea are close in every sense of the word. We are the nearest of neighbours, the most steadfast and trusted of partners, and the very oldest of friends. Our connection stretches back thousands of years to Torres Strait Islanders and Indigenous traders, weaving together their cultures and communities. And while the modern relationship that we celebrate with your visit today has evolved and expanded to include every field of human endeavour, from agriculture and medicine to education, sport and the front line of clean energy, our bond still holds true to the spirit of those very first exchanges. We embrace each other as equals. We learn from each other as neighbours. We are there for each other as mates, especially when times are hard. And in everything our people do together, we nourish our common interests, our shared values and our unique connections, including, of course, a great and growing passion for that mighty cultural institution, rugby league. Sport brings our people together. It is a part of our shared bond, and Prime Minister, like you, I hope the day will come when the people of Papua New Guinea can cheer for a team of their own in the National Rugby League. Yeah. Next year, we will commemorate and celebrate the 50th anniversary of Papua New Guinea's independence, a momentous day in the life of both our nations. Australia will always be proud of the part we played in that time of historic change. Yet we know that independence was never our gift to give. Independence was the people of Papua New Guinea's right to assert. It was your country's opportunity to seize. It was an act of great courage, profound national unity, and a statement of self-belief as well as self-determination. It sent a message to our region then. It stands as an example to our region now. It speaks for a universal truth. Every Pacific nation, big and small, has the right to shape its own future and secure its own destiny. Mr Prime Minister, half a century ago, the Whitlam Labor government worked with purpose and pride alongside your leaders and your citizens to lay the foundations of a new democracy. Today, our government is partnering with yours to build the architecture of peace and opportunity, to fulfil your vision of a modern and prosperous future for your people. A vision that both our peoples are helping to make real, teaching together in PNG schools, studying together at Australian universities and TAFEs, working together including through the expanded and reformed Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme. Not only bringing essential skills to Australian farms and aged care homes, but also sending good wages back to families in your country, and working together to build the infrastructure that can transform the words and ambitions of our agreements into concrete realities. New projects backed by Australia, including through the Australian Infrastructure Financing Facility for the Pacific, and built by the people of PNG. Over 1,800 kilometres of roads connecting services and support and supplies to remote villages, and giving your farmers and producers access to city markets. Upgrading 6 priority ports and building better biosecurity so PNG can sell more of your world-class cocoa and coffee and seafood to the region and to the world. Investing in new clean energy projects to bring light and power and economic opportunity to homes and schools, hospitals and health centres. Building new undersea cables, breaking down the barriers of isolation to bring jobs and education in reach of boys and girls alike. Mr Prime Minister, Australia wants to build this future with you and secure it with you as your primary partner. Central to this is the new bilateral security agreement that we signed here in Parliament House in December last year, the beginning of a new era of cooperation between our nations, spanning defence, border policy, policing and maritime security, and meeting the urgent challenges of cybersecurity and climate change. An agreement for the future, but one anchored in our shared history. Mr Prime Minister, On the other side of the world, in a quiet French village that I've had the privilege of visiting, called Villas Bretonneux, when the children of the local school play in the yard each day, they look up at a big banner and it says, "Do not forget Australia." A sacred command from one generation to the next, given in honour of the memory of more than 3,000 Australians who died defending the town from German attacks during the First World War. Villas Bretonneux is a name that lives in Anzac legend. So is Kokoda. And when Australians reflect on the heroism the people of Papua New Guinea showed in the defence of their homeland, when we remember those soldiers and coast watchers serving and sacrificing together, the families and communities who risked their own lives to feed and guide and help Australians in desperate need during our darkest hour, when we remember the care and kindness your people extended to wounded diggers in their hardest moments of pain and fear, I say to you, Australia will never forget Papua New Guinea. Yeah. And those words do not need to be displayed on a sign or engraved on a memorial, because they were written by the courage of your people, and they are recorded in every Australian heart. When I had the great honour of addressing the PNG Parliament at the beginning of last year, the first foreign leader to do so, I said this would be a decisive decade for both our nations and for the Indo-Pacific. It will be a decisive decade for us, and it can be a decisive decade because of us, because of what we decide together, Papua New Guinea and Australia, the cooperation and stability we can build together, the peace and security we can uphold together, the growth and prosperity we can achieve together, the broader opportunity and deeper equality we can create together, the democratic values we can champion together. Two free, proud and independent democracies, two countries home to unique environmental treasures, two lands rich in natural resources and richer still in human potential, two bold, diverse and resilient populations ready to make this decade our own, neighbours and mates, partners and equals. Prime Minister Marape, Australians will never forget what the people of Papua New Guinea did for us in the past. Let us never doubt what we can achieve together in our future. You are most welcome in our Parliament today. You are welcome in Australia always, and we look forward very much to your speech today. Welcome, Prime Minister.
I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, it'll come as no surprise to our guest of honour here today that I wholeheartedly support the hospitable words which Prime Minister Albanese has delivered on behalf of the government. In that same spirit, I extend to you, Prime Minister Marape, to Madam Marape, to the ministers and other members of your delegation, a very, very warm welcome on behalf of the Coalition and the Federal Opposition. Friends are dear, and you and your people are our dear friends. While you are your country's 8th Prime Minister, you're not the first Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea to You are the first Prime Minister, of Papua New Guinea to address a joint sitting of the Australian Parliament as has been noted, and this is indeed a historic moment. Our two nations share a history which has brought you here today, and your presence here carries with it the weight of that shared history. In reflecting on that shared history, we reignite our appreciation for Australia and Papua New Guinea's deep connections and how we formed an abiding friendship. There was, of course, our prehistoric beginnings when Australia and New Guinea were a single continent. And even after melting ice sheets and rising seas separated us some 8,000 years ago, contact was maintained via trade between our two coastal Indigenous populations who island hopped across the Torres Strait. The Enlightenment and Age of Empires saw European exploration and colonisation of the Pacific between the 16th and 19th centuries. That inevitability brought modernity in all its forms and shades, and by the 20th century, our two countries' fates were interlocked through a series of events over almost 7 decades. We were bound together in 1906 with Australia's administration of the territory of Papua, formerly British New Guinea, and bonds tightened further with Australia's governing of New Guinea, formerly German New Guinea, from 1920 after the defeat and withdrawal of the Kaiser's forces. The Second World War, as the Prime Minister rightly pointed out, saw us face a mutual threat. And as brothers in arms, we fought against the invading Imperial Japanese forces, most doggedly on the Kokoda Track. Amidst the hell of war and the sacrifice which came from service, we formed an imperishable friendship. That fellowship is encapsulated in Peter Ryan's Fear, Drive My Feet, an account of his experiences and survival as an Australian intelligence operative behind enemy lines. Peter was supported by villagers, carriers and police boys whom he remembered with affection and described as dignified and indispensable. To this day, Australians commemorate the tenacity of your soldiers, the bravery of your coast watchers and the compassion of your Fuzzy Wuzzy angels, who all helped turn the tide of the war. Soon after the war, the two territories became one in 1949, in a changing and decolonising world. As the want for trusteeship waned, wishes, of course, for independence grew. Prime Minister Robert Menzies championed the right of the people of Papua and New Guinea to choose their own future. Indeed, in March of 1962, Menzies expressed Australia's great sense of moral responsibility for the welfare of the people to whom we stand in a special relationship. Menzies spoke of our aim to create and develop the capacity of independent self-government. Off the back of a remarkable nation-building endeavour, Papua New Guinea's independence arrived in 1975. It was an achievement of two peoples, those who desired their freedom and those who wished and supported their friends to attain it. Prime Minister Marape, in the almost half-century since the birth of your independent nation, Papua New Guinea and Australia have accomplished much together. Personal friendships, professional relationships and government partnerships have grown in substance and indeed number across the years. I was honoured to be part of the previous Australian government under the coalition which, together with you and your colleagues in the last government, opened new pipelines of enterprise and collaboration. Through Australia's establishment of the new Colombo Plan in 2014, our students have had the privilege to study, work and learn in PNG. In 2015, we launched the Pacific Leadership and Governance Precinct, which has seen thousands of your public servants receive training at both our universities. Australia was honoured to support PNG in hosting a very highly successful APEC meeting in 2018. And in the same year, we handed over the first Guardian-class patrol boat, which now number 4 in your Defence Force. So I pay true tribute to you, Prime Minister Marape, and indeed former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison. Together, your leadership and vision saw us elevate our special relationship in 2020 to a comprehensive strategic and economic partnership. Perhaps there was no prouder moment in recent history than our cooperation during the pandemic. We fought it together, Prime Minister, and Australia was proud to provide assistance to PNG in distributing vaccines, delivering personal protective equipment when it wasn't otherwise available, and deploying medical teams and Defence Force personnel. We also combated the scourge of illegal fishing and people smuggling in our region together, and for that we're very grateful. Prime Minister Marape, at the Lowy Institute in 2019, you spoke about writing a new book for Papua New Guinea. Under your leadership, your country is penning the first chapters of that new book. Like you, I am confident it will be filled with many stories of success, and I'm certain Australia will feature in those chapters, both as a partner of choice and close friend of Papua New Guinea. In your Lowy address, I was moved by your words about Papua New Guinea seizing its own destiny and not allowing external forces to dictate the direction you take. Australia supports you and your country in that noble endeavour. In the same spirit, we welcomed your independence in 1975. Of course, we find ourselves in precarious times, find ourselves in times of emboldened autocrats who have no hesitation in using inducements, coercion and outright force against other nations to realise their zero-sum ambitions. These autocrats who use the carrot one day and the stick the next have a complete disregard for sovereignty, for law and liberty. Our forebears knew only too well the price paid for insecurity and aggression which goes undeterred. Indeed, within the deep soil of your country and flowing through the blood of Papua New Guineans and Australians is the memory of the service and sacrifice of our forebears. May our memory of them impel us to become stronger together through our defence and security cooperation, and may we form fellowships of greater strength with our mutual partners and friends in the Pacific and wider region. From strength comes security, and from security comes stability, and from stability comes prosperity. Prime Minister Marape, you are a dear friend to Australia. We welcome you dearly to the Australian Parliament. We look forward most sincerely to your address with anticipation, with attentive ears and with abiding friendship in our hearts. Thank you.
Mr Prime Minister, it gives me great pleasure to invite you to address the House.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Madam Senate President, the Honourable Members of the House of Parliament, people of Australia, I want to begin by appreciating, firstly, and acknowledging the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodian of the land in which we gather here today. Yesterday I was given extraordinary honor and privilege to witness the welcome to country, and I want to appreciate the elders and people, past, today, and those who are emerging into the future. I bring to you warm greetings from my people, people of Papua New Guinea, to each and every one of you leaders in this House. But more importantly, please, as you visit your constituent, convey our best wishes, our regards, but more importantly, our thankfulness to the good people who have been so kind and wonderful to my people. Let me congratulate you, having reached your 236th national anniversary. Day in my calendar I celebrate with your mission staff in Port Moresby every time it comes around. And thank you for according me special status as guest of Australia. Today, my delegation, including my wife, are absolutely honoured that you have received us very well. Prime Minister, I want to appreciate your suggestion and the fruition of that invitation. Thank you very much, and Mr. Speaker, again, thank you for graciously allowing me into your House. As I begin my speech, let me start with a reflection. A leader from the highlands of Papua New Guinea, where I come from, once visited Canberra and Australia in the 1950s. His name is Kondom Agwendo. He made a speech in his own mother tongue because he knew no English. And it drew some laughter from the crowd. And he made a statement that is quite sentimental and historic. He said, "Today I come to you and speak to you in my language and you laugh at me. One day my son will come to you and speak in your language, and you will certainly listen." Today, as I stand before you in your wonderful house, this prophecy is being fulfilled. I speak to you in the language you taught me. I hear every word that Prime Minister Albanese, the opposition leader, and I hear every word that Australia has been speaking and uttering to us since 1901, when you became your own sovereignty and your adoption of us into your family in 1906. As the prophecy of the father of my nation, one of the fathers of my nation, come to pass today, I come to you as their son, son of Papua New Guinea. I don't come to you as James Marape. And I speak as the chief servant of the people of the most diverse nation on the face of planet Earth. We are many tribes, many languages, but one nation. I am very deeply honored to be accorded this rare privilege, being the first Prime Minister of my country, to address the Australian Parliament. It is a high privilege I do not take for granted, and my people and myself will treasure this moment as a moment of honor for Papua New Guinea, and more importantly, Papua New Guinea-Australia relationship. Thus, it is with a profound sense of humility and responsibility that I am giving you this address. This is truly a historic moment for my country. And as I stand and gaze upon the halls of this magnificent building, I am reminded of the long journey you too have taken to arrive at this point and at this time and at this place. This is a magnificent Parliament House, a truly impressive architectural and landscape marvel that carefully blends the atmosphere of a modern, thriving Australia, but more importantly, with the revered traditions of your Indigenous people. A proud testament to the resilience and tenacity of Australian people to survive against all odds and flourish, and your continued upholding of democracy and its freedom and enriching way of life that all of us, we too in Papua New Guinea, have come to love and cherish. It was from this Parliament, the 98th Act of 1975, called the PNG Independence Act of 1975, cut the umbilical cord that from the wombs of Australia to birth Papua New Guinea. And I want to say thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was from this Parliament that many decisions were made that have helped and shaped what Papua New Guinea was before 1975 and what Papua New Guinea is after 1975. This is why Papua New Guinea has a very special and very unique relationship with Australia. We are the only country Australia has bettered. Many young Papua New Guineans and perhaps Australians do not realize the depth of our shared history. Let me remind them. Let me remind them. Barely out of colonization yourself, when 6 colonies merged into a federation that became an independent nation from Great Britain in 1901, Australia officially took over Papua New Guinea as its own colony in 1906 until you granted us independence in 1975. Through those years, our two people passed through the World War I periods, the great pandemic of the late 1900s, I think 1918 it was, or 1919. We passed through the depressions of 1920s and 1930s. We passed through the World War II, where in defense of our shared territories, the Kokoda spirit was born. After World War II, your public servants, your teachers, your healthcare workers, your Christian missionaries, your business folks, and many, many more continued to work over in the 1950s and 1960s until our political independence in 1975. Many of these Australians lost their lives in the course of duty. Some did remain back to continue on serving after 1975. The amount of work Australia put into the administration of Papua New Guinea can never be ignored by Papua New Guineans. History holds all the details, but the greatest and most profound Australian rule impact of the Australian administration is the democracy you left with us. Our Constitution, our democratic system of government, our judiciary, the public service, the education system, our financial and banking system, and our Christian worldview is what you left in PNG. You see me standing here speaking in English. I learned that through the school system you set up. The God I worship today, the Christian God, is the God your missionaries brought into Papua New Guinea. The imprint of Australia is second to none in Papua New Guinea. Your legacies live on. But let me say, amongst all the legacies, and if I could be respectful, no greater legacy remains forever in the hearts and minds of Papua New Guinea than the great imprint of Gough Whitlam Labour government, agreeing to the work Menzies may have started, and the generation in the 60s may have started, but the final cut in the umbilical cord between Australia and PNG took place under the watch of Prime Minister Whitlam and my forerunner, the father of my country, Great-Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare. It was Labour Whitlam government and the Somare Pangu government these days 50 years ago that set in motion the train to make Papua New Guinea become a democratic sovereignty. And I want to pay my homage to the memory of Prime Minister Whitlam. Whilst he may take the greater limelight today, but it is better said and appreciated than not at all. I want to say thank you to all before him, but more importantly, to the memory of Prime Minister Whitlam for being perhaps the most socially progressive of his time, for his policy of self-determination for indigenous people of Australia, and for heeding the cries of the founding fathers of Papua New Guinea for our own self-determination. Last night, Minister Penny Wong passed on a piece of jam to me when we were sitting at the dinner table, and thank you, Opposition Leader, for gracing us, Mr. Speaker and Madam President. Thank you for wonderful hospitality last night when Prime Minister Albanese and myself were together. His quote goes like this: if history were to obliterate the whole of my public service career, save my contribution to the independence of a democratic Papua New Guinea, I should rest content. Mr. Whitlam, we honor your memory, sir. Your name is now etched into the history books of Papua New Guinea forever, taught in schools, uttered every year when we raised our flag and celebrated our independence on 16th September. Hundreds of years from now may come and go, may pass, even when James Marape moves on from public life. But the name Gough Whitlam will forever live on because of Papua New Guinea, because of Australia and your leadership then and his generation of leaders. Papua New Guinea is independent today. Rest content at God's bosom, Mr. Whitlam. 49 years later, we are here at the eve of the 50th anniversary of Papua New Guinea's nationhood. And you may ask me this question: how have the 49 years have been for Papua New Guinea? Of course, needless to remind you, most of you know our anguish, and you also know whatever joys we have, including the joys on the rugby league field that we find. It is true that our challenges are many, and our systems remain fragile. It is true our people need greater empowerment in many aspects of their life. But not all is bad. Not all is bad. Nearly 50 years on, our democracy remains strong as ever. Our Constitution as bold as ever since it was mounted first in our Constituent Assembly on 15th of August 1975 under Australian administration. We have not fallen to the barrel of gun as many emerging nations globally have fallen to, and our democracy in a land of 1,000 tribes remains vital, its vitality secured and intact. Despite the huge challenges of our land, the diversity of culture and languages, and a weak economic starting point at 1975, our 1,000 tribes are still keeping on as one people, one nation, one country, in total allegiance to the Constitution. Our people are resilient and continue to draw strength from the traditional social support system refined over thousands of years. Since 1975, we have run 10 elections. Many of them had their fair share of challenges, but we unfailingly have produced governments. Yes, there might have been many contests along the way, including vote of no confidences, but we have remained one democratic nation, maintaining the core of democracy in our country. We have not failed to uphold the values and principles of democracy as enshrined in our national constitution. Many people forget the huge disadvantage we started with and the natural obstacles we continue to face. Our country is a big country. We're not a small island state. We're a big country. Our country comprises 462,840 square kilometers of land. To give you some context, the land size is bigger than Japan, bigger than New Zealand, bigger than United Kingdom or England. It is one of the most rugged and inaccessible countries in the world because of its impenetrable dense tropical rainforests, its terrain, its thick jungles, open valleys, vast swamplands, complex river systems that is ready to fire up your clean energy source, isolated islands, and far-flung atolls. Huge diversity in terms of not just culture and people, but the landscape in itself. You throw that into a starting economic base of a 5 billion Guinea economy. If you relate to Australian dollars, it's possibly under 1 billion Australian dollar at 1975. We had a population base of 3.5 million, 95% of whom were illiterate, all diverse and living in rural areas, a country with no modern infrastructure, roads, only with few small scattered towns, and a very small percentage of people in formal employment. My own Huli tribe, for instance, came first in contact with government and church workers in 1952. This was our starting point in 1975. These have all been our challenges, but as I visit you today, I ask you, do not give up on Papua New Guinea. We have always bounced back from our low moments, and we will continue to grow, learning from every low moments and every high moments. We learn from past experiences. In this regard, I want to indicate to this House, we are making structural reforms and trying our best to improve our public sector efficiency to carry the country for the next 50 years. These reforms and changes include our governance and our public service structure. Changes are also being made to our courts and our judiciary, the police force, and we are also strengthening our anti-corruption laws and environment. For our economy, we have made a number of progress from the last couple of years. You recall my 5 billion Guinea economy starting point. When I took government in 2019, we were 80 billion Guinea economy. Today, IMF and World Bank will confirm that we are operating in a 111 billion Guinea economy, and our own government and my generation of leaders aim to move it to a 200 billion Guinea economy, if not in the next 10 years at the very earliest. The need to move the economic pendulum is more important right now because of the higher growth of population we have in Papua New Guinea. And economists amongst us would know population must grow lower than economic growth to sustain an economy. That is our target. I thank all people of Australia, having said this, who have helped shape and build my country. Politicians, public servants, missionaries, members of non-government agencies and organizations, businessmen and businesswomen. But I want to take this time to, in a very special way, thank a special group of people. Patrol and district officers, sometimes we've left them behind in our praise for others, or we call them in PNG in a special way the Kiaps. This special breed of men patrol my country well into its interior in the 1950s and 60s after the war, many of them losing their lives from the challenges of that occupation. It is on this note I want to acknowledge a couple of special surviving Kiaps who are still here with us, 3 of them in this precinct, in the public galleries. Graham Watts, who served in Rabaul, Bill Sanders, who served in Chimbu, John and Morak Hognol, who are present in the public gallery. I just want to appreciate them. They represent the fair dinkum spirit of Aussies, if I could put it this way, leaving the comforts of their own homes and traveling into uncharted territories. If there is a need to write books, the books, in as far as PNG relationship is concerned with Australia, must be written many, many times over. In 1975, Mr. and Mrs. Hocknell, for instance, who were themselves in the early 20s, witnessed the lowering of Australian flag for the last time, and uplifting and hoisting of PNG flag for the first time in remote Como in the southern highlands of Papua New Guinea. Como would have seen the first outside contact through them. They had the first son born with no modern hospital care, born in the remote villages of the southern highlands of Papua New Guinea. This is what I'm talking about, part of the contribution Australia has made to my country. And I want to acknowledge them, and I want to acknowledge all who worked. The Somare generation of Papua New Guineans are also present here. I brought with me 2 of the fathers of our country. They represent the generation of Somare, Sir Peter Luce, and the fathers of my country. I have Sir Rabu Kumara representing the provincial governments, and I have Sir Yano Bello from the first cabinet at 1975. That generation of Papua New Guineans and that generation of Australians ensured Papua New Guinea and Australia of 2024 is together. And I want to appreciate them sincerely from the bottom of my heart. This generation planted the seed of democracy and political independence. Mr. Speaker, they worked hard in their time. I want now to extend my great appreciation to all of you, successive governments of past. Since then, many governments have come and gone on both sides of the Torres Strait. Many heads of mission have come and gone from representing Australia to PNG, and I just want to thank all who have stayed with us for the last 49 years. Governments of past and members of parliament, public servants, as well as heads of missions. Many came last night who have continued to maintain affinity for Papua New Guinea. I just want to say thank you very much to all who have stayed with us the last 49 years. Thank you for your continued support throughout the life of our nationhood. Your assistance in education, in health, in infrastructure developments, in ports, roads, and telecommunications, etc., continue to play a very crucial role in the development of our country. And I want to also acknowledge, in the same vein, all Australian investors who continue to invest in Papua New Guinea. Australian businesses comprise the biggest pool of foreign investors in Papua New Guinea. Thank you for your support to our economy. For my government, I also acknowledge the Liberal-led government under my friend Scott Morrison for their support. Peter, you're here. I want to acknowledge the time we set government together on both sides. And I want to acknowledge my good friend, Prime Minister Albanese, and your present Labour government. All governments have been kind to us and fair to us, but under my watch, I was privileged to have served with and alongside with both the Liberal government and the Labour government. The comprehensive strategic economic program that we mounted in 2020 is an embodiment of our PNG-Australia relationship that is elevated even higher. This program entrenches the direction I am taking for my country, which is to move PNG away from being an aid donor recipient nation to becoming a very important economic partner nation, an economically self-reliant nation. I want to also appreciate Prime Minister Albanese and your Labour government for the recent signing of the bilateral security agreement. This holds a blueprint that reflects our focus collectively and my focus on PNG becoming a strong, economically resilient nation. A strong, economically empowered Papua New Guinea means a stronger and more secure Australia and the Pacific. And I repeat, a strong, economically empowered Papua New Guinea means a stronger Australia and a more secure Australia and Pacific. Next year, 2025, PNG will celebrate 50 years of nationhood, and I take this opportunity to invite all Australian leadership to join us in our celebration. The key institutions of our society that you have helped establish have been turning 50 as we herald our country's Golden Jubilee. Last year, we celebrated 50 years of our central bank. Our central bank was still reporting to Australian Federal Reserve in 1973. Last year, we celebrated Air Niugini's 50 year, our national airline carrier. Last year, we celebrated 50 years of our national broadcaster, the National Broadcasting Corporation. This year, we will witness our National and Supreme Court celebrating 50 years and other several key institutions of state. We thank Australia for the profound work that have gone into setting up these key institutions that remains the anchor of our free, vibrant democracy. Last year, Prime Minister Albanese, when you addressed our National Parliament, I must say it moved all of us, it touched all of us. You spoke of Papua New Guinea as an equal, a co-development partner in the Pacific with Australia and New Zealand. You gave the assurance that Australia would help PNG in our core focus areas of security, labour mobility, youth empowerment, and downstream processing of our renewable resources as we work together going forward. Of course, you also saw the need for us to use rugby league to unite the most diverse nation on the face of planet Earth. I'm grateful for this, Mr. Prime Minister. I'm grateful for your deep commitment to our shared values and principles. Your call is the right call in the right direction to complete and continue on nurturing Papua New Guinea to become economically independent and a strong nation. Papua New Guinea must not continue to be an aid grant receiving nation, a nation that depends on borrowing every year to survive. We must become a strong country standing on our 2 feet, economically independent and strong, so we too can help Australia maintain democracy, preserve peace and ensure stability in our part of planet Earth, in our Pacific. As a country that is on the western fringes of our region, we view this is something that must be done with a sense of agency, and we take this responsibility seriously. Papua New Guinea forever appreciates the assistance by Australia to become a safe, secure and free from transnational crimes of drug trafficking, firearm trade, money laundering, terrorism and others. We aspire to be a safe and secure country with a robust economy. Honourable members, you will note my underlying tone here of deep gratitude. Australia has been a huge pillar of support for my country and my people. Ours is a relationship that has shared ethnicity, that is built on shared ethnicity between Torres Strait Islanders and my people up north from you, between indigenous Australasian people and Melanesian people who have lived in this space of planet Earth for more than thousands of years. History shows that we have lived over 10,000 years in this part of planet Earth. We also locked into Earth's crust together. If you look into your geological study, you realize that the Indo-Australasian plate holds us together. We share that. And so one might say, we are joined to the hips. We are joined at the hips. So we are going nowhere, but we must coexist until Jesus comes. Our shared modern history of over a century or maybe more makes us uniquely related. Many of us in Papua New Guinea see Australia as a big brother or sister who took care of us when you were still a teenager. You nurtured us into young adulthood and continues to support us to this day. If Britain was our imperial mother, as they say, this certainly holds a lot of truth. We were cut out from the same democratic cloth. One can choose friends, but one is stuck with family forever. One is stuck with family forever. Our two countries are stuck with each other. We have no choice but to get along. We have no choice but to get along. Mr. Speaker and honourable members, today I carry the humble and deep, deep gratitude of my people, the 1,000 tribes, and on their behalf, I want to thank Australia for everything you have done and continue to do for us. We realize our success as a nation will be the ultimate payoff for the work put in by many, many Australians of past. I therefore commit my generation of Papua New Guineans to augmenting the sanctity of our democracy and progressing our economy. We pledge to work hard to ensure PNG emerges as an economy that is self-sustaining our nation so that we too can help keep our region safe, secure and prosperous for our two people and those in our Indo-Pacific family. In a world of many relations with many nations, nothing will come in between our two countries because we are family. Through tears, blood, pain and sacrifice that are now anchored in our eternal past, our nations are constructed today. A Greek proverb goes like this in closing. Mr. Speaker, I will not keep you long. A Greek proverb goes like this, and I paraphrase. Our society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they will not sit under. The Whitlam Somare generation planted the trees of democracy and free market economy whose shade we enjoy today. These great leaders, whose shoe I will never fill, certainly never fill, they did their part. They moved on into the enclaves of history. But I ask myself this question as the chief servant of my country. Am I planting enough trees sufficient for the shade in which my child and the child of Papua New Guinea and Australia can sit under? Maybe you too can ponder this question in regards to our two people, two nations, and two economies. Yesterday I reminded my Nunuwal elder sister, Sister Serena Williams. I met her outside and she's sitting somewhere here. I reminded her and her family when they received me into the country. I reminded her of the impossibility of unwinding the past, but the absolute possibility of constructing the future. I say the same reminder again here in Canberra, the great meeting place of the Nunuwal people and now modern Australia. Our sad past we cannot change, the goods and the bad, more good I know, but it must come, it must become tailwinds to guide and shepherd us into our collective future. Our future becomes more certain when we find common grounds to preserve and protect each other. And I want to thank you in closing. Thank very much every Australian for what you have done for Papua New Guinea thus far. Today I did not come to give you more requests. Rather, I came to say thank you. Thank you, Bada Bada Herea. Thank you, Thomas. Bigla, thank you through. Long Olga, Australia. I speak in the language where my three friends up in the public gallery can understand. And I want to say thank you to all Australians. You've helped us shape what is modern-day Papua New Guinea. We're looking forward to not letting down the aspirations of those who came before us in the preservation of our democracy in a modern, thriving Papua New Guinea economy. Contribute where you can and leave the rest to us. We will do our best. May God forever bless Australia, and may God forever bless Papua New Guinea. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr Prime Minister, on behalf of the House, I thank you for your address. I wish you and Madam Marape a successful and enjoyable visit to Australia. I thank the President of the Senate and Senators for their attendance. I invite the Prime Minister to escort our guests from the chamber, and the chair will be resumed at the ringing of the bells.